Ifeoma, what are you doing here? I came to see you, she replied, her eyes searching his for the love she once knew. I wanted to remind you of what we had, of our promise. But before Chinedu could respond, Adaeze walked in, her demeanor cold and unyielding. Chinedu, we need to discuss the new project. Ifeoma turned to Adaeze, recognizing the look in her eyes. Who is she, Chinedu? She asked, her voice breaking. Chinedu hesitated, his heart torn. Ifeoma, this is Adaeze. She's my boss. Once upon a time, in the heart of Africa, the sun had just begun to set over the village of Umunza, casting long shadows across the dusty paths and the thatched roofs of the humble homes. The evening air was filled with the sounds of children laughing, goats bleating, and the distant beat of drums signaling the start of the nightly gathering. In the heart of the village, Chinedu sat with his childhood sweetheart, Ifeoma, beneath the ancient baobab tree. The tree, with its gnarled branches and thick trunk, was a silent witness to their love story, a love story that everyone in the village knew and admired. Do you remember the first time we climbed this tree? Chinedu asked, his voice soft and filled with nostalgia. Ifeoma smiled, her eyes sparkling with the memory. Of course I do. You were so scared of falling, but you didn't want to admit it. You held my hand so tightly. Chinedu laughed, the sound echoing through the evening air. And you were so brave, like always. You made me feel like I could do anything. Their bond was strong, unbreakable, or so they thought. From the time they were children, they had been inseparable. Everyone in the village knew that Chinedu and Ifeoma were meant to be together. They had promised each other that nothing would ever come between them, that they would always stand by each other's side, no matter what. But as the sun set on that tranquil evening, a shadow fell over their idyllic world. A stranger had come to Umunza, a woman named Adaeze. She was beautiful, with skin like ebony and eyes that seemed to hold the secrets of the universe. She was a wealthy businesswoman from the city, and her arrival stirred the quiet village like a storm. Chinedu first met Adaeze at the market. She was buying yams, haggling with the vendor with a confidence that was both intimidating and alluring. Chinedu, always eager to help, offered to carry her goods to her new home. Thank you, young man, Adaeze said, her voice smooth and commanding. What is your name? Chinedu, he replied, slightly flustered by her presence. Chinedu, she repeated, smiling. You are very kind. I can see why people speak highly of you. The days that followed saw Chinedu and Adaeze crossing paths more frequently. Adaeze seemed to be everywhere, and slowly she began to weave herself into the fabric of Chinedu's life. She was different from anyone he had ever met, and her stories of the city, of wealth and power, fascinated him. One evening, as the village gathered around the fire for stories and songs, Chinedu found himself sitting next to Adaeze. Ifeoma, watching from a distance, felt a pang of jealousy, but she trusted Chinedu. They had promised each other, after all. Tell me more about the city, Chinedu asked Adaeze, his eyes alight with curiosity. Adaeze leaned in closer, her voice a mere whisper. The city is a place of endless possibilities, Chinedu. Wealth, power, influence. You can have it all if you know how to play the game. Chinedu was enthralled. He had always dreamed of more, of leaving the village and making something of himself. And here was Adaeze offering him a glimpse of that dream. As the weeks passed, Chinedu's visits to Adaeze became more frequent. They would sit for hours, talking about the future, about dreams and ambitions. Chinedu began to distance himself from Ifeoma, not intentionally, but because his mind was filled with visions of a life beyond the village. The day came when Chinedu made a decision that would change everything. He went to Ifeoma, his heart heavy with the weight of what he was about to say. "Ifeoma," he began, his voice trembling, "I need to tell you something." Ifeoma looked at him, her heart sinking. She could feel the change in him, and she feared what was coming. "I've decided to go to the city," Chinedu continued. "Adaeze has offered me a job, an opportunity to make something of myself. I can't pass this up." Ifeoma's eyes filled with tears. "What about us, Chinedu? What about our promise?" Chinedu took her hands in his. "I will come back for you, Ifeoma. I promise. This is just something I need to do for us, for our future." But Ifeoma knew that things would never be the same. She watched as Chinedu packed his things, as he said his goodbyes. And when he left with Adais, a part of her heart went with him. In the city, Chinedu found a world vastly different from the one he had known. The hustle and bustle, the bright lights, and the endless opportunities excited him. Adaeze kept her promise and introduced him to influential people, securing him a position in her company. Chinedu worked hard, and as the months turned into years, he climbed the ladder of success. But with success came distance. Chinedu's visits to the village became less frequent, and his calls to Ifeoma dwindled. He was consumed by his new life, by the demands of his job, and the allure of the city's charms. Adaeze, always by his side, began to occupy more than just his thoughts. She was a constant presence, a reminder of the life he had chosen. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, Chinedu's feelings for her grew. It was a quiet evening when Chinedu's world came crashing down. He was in his office, working late, when Ifeoma walked in. She had come to the city to surprise him, to remind him of their love and their promise. "Chinedu," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "It's been so long. I missed you." Chinedu looked up, shocked to see her standing there. "Ifeoma, what are you doing here?" "I came to see you," she replied, her eyes searching his for the love she once knew. "I wanted to remind you of what we had, of our promise." But before Chinedu could respond, Adaeze walked in, her demeanor cold and unyielding. "Chinedu, we need to discuss the new project." Ifeoma turned to Adaeze, recognizing the look in her eyes. "Who is she, Chinedu?" she asked, her voice breaking. Chinedu hesitated, his heart torn. "Ifeoma, this is Adaeze. She's my boss." The pain in Ifeoma's eyes was unbearable. "Is that all she is, Chinedu?" Chinedu couldn't bring himself to answer. The silence was all the confirmation Ifeoma needed. She turned and left, her heart shattered into a million pieces. The days that followed were a blur for Chinedu. He tried calling Ifeoma, but she wouldn't answer. He wrote letters, but they went unanswered. He knew he had broken her heart, and in doing so, he had broken his own. Adaeze, sensing his turmoil, tried to comfort him. "Chinedu, you have a bright future ahead of you. You can't let this hold you back." But Chinedu couldn't shake the feeling of loss, the feeling that he had betrayed the one person who had always believed in him. Years passed, and Chinedu's success grew, but it felt hollow. He had everything he had ever wanted, but it meant nothing without Ifeoma. One day, he made a decision. He would return to the village, to the place where it all began and try to make things right. When he arrived in Numunze, the village seemed unchanged, but Chinedu felt like a stranger. He went to Ifeoma's home, his heart pounding with anticipation and fear. Ifeoma's mother greeted him, her eyes filled with sadness. "Chinedu, you shouldn't have come." "I need to see her," Chinedu pleaded. "I need to make things right." Ifeoma's mother sighed. "She is not the same, Chinedu. The years have been hard on her." But Chinedu insisted, and eventually Ifeoma's mother led him to the baobab tree. There, sitting beneath its ancient branches, was Ifeoma. She looked up as he approached, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and sorrow. "Ifeoma," Chinedu began, his voice breaking, "I'm so sorry. I was a fool. I let my ambition blind me. I broke my promise to you." Ifeoma stood, her eyes blazing with emotion. "You broke more than that, Chinedu. You broke my heart. You left me for a dream, for a woman who promised you the world. And now you come back, thinking an apology will fix everything." Chinedu fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "I know I can't undo the past, but I want to make it right. I want to start over, to rebuild what we lost." Ifeoma shook her head. "It's not that simple, Chinedu. Trust is not something you can rebuild with words. It takes time, and I don't know if I have any more to give." Chinedu stayed in the village, working hard to regain Ifeoma's trust. He helped the villagers, using his skills and resources to improve their lives. Slowly, Ifeoma saw the change in him. He was no longer the ambitious young man blinded by dreams of grandeur. He had become humble, kind, and sincere. One day, as the sun set over the village, Ifeoma approached Chinedu. "You've changed, Chinedu. You've shown me that you truly regret what you did, but I need more time." Chinedu nodded, understanding. "I will wait for as long as it takes, Ifeoma. I will never leave you again." Months turned into years, and slowly Ifeoma's heart began to heal. She saw in Chinedu the man she had once loved, but stronger, wiser. They started spending time together under the baobab tree where their story had begun. One evening, as they sat beneath the tree, Chinedu took Ifeoma's hand. "Ifeoma, will you marry me? I know I don't deserve it, but I promise I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you." Ifeoma looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity and love that had always been there. "Yes, Chinedu, I will marry you." The village rejoiced, for the love story that had once been broken was now whole again. Chinedu and Ifeoma's wedding was a grand celebration, a testament to the power of forgiveness and the strength of true love. Thanks for watching. I would love to know your thoughts in the comment section. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share with your friends and loved ones.